episode of Dating at Her Age, we discuss the issue of dating someone who has an addiction to illicit drugs, to prescription drugs, or alcohol.
There is discussion throughout this episode of the potential for violence or abuse in relationships like this and other problems that addiction can cause for couples. So we've provided a list of toll-free phone numbers and a website link in the podcast description.
This is to help connect our listeners to experts who can offer professional advice, resources, and guidance to you and the person you love.
She's taking care of the kids. She's holding the fort down, paying the bills, while I'm just kind of destroying everything. All these things that when you're stuck in your addiction, you really just don't even think about. It's like Jekyll and Hyde.
As we go through our dating journey and we consider getting into relationships, one aspect of this is, should I date somebody who's suffering from an addiction, whether that's drug addiction or alcohol addiction? And should I stay with them through their recovery? I've been in this situation before where I've had to make these decisions. And I'm really glad we're talking about this because a lot of people are on their journey to recovery. But I think for both of us, me in my 50s, you in your 20s, this is a real question we have. Like, if we decide to date them, how do we do that?
Yeah, I think this is a very relatable topic, whether people like that or not, that you may face this and you may have already faced it. I'm not even 30 years old and addiction is a big part of my life and the people I love. So I think about it all the time on just kind of how to navigate that, if it's worth navigating. You don't want to give up on someone, but you also care about them, but you have to care about yourself. It's just a very complicated issue.
And you and I have talked about this, like how do you date somebody and get into relationships with somebody who's dealing with addiction and not lose yourself?
Yeah, it's hard you need to protect your peace, but you also want to protect them at the same time. So it's a fine line.
So let's bring in Travis Whittaker. He's the owner of Diamond Recovery Center in Utah. He's also a recovering addict. And I've known you for a long time, Travis, because we have worked on news stories in the past when I worked for KSL 5 television. Caitlin just met you. And I think what's a good place to start here is tell us about your journey through recovery and what that was like with your wife, because you've been married for almost 30 years now.
Yeah, 30 years this August.
So start with your journey. Where did your addiction begin, and what were you addicted to?
So my journey began at about the age of 26, I want to say. I got hurt from a sports injury, broke my L4, L5 disc in my back, and kind of dealt with it for a little bit till I was married and then had insurance. And then, I went to the doctor, had x-rays done. And, back then it was, here's some Percocet, here's some Loratab, take them as prescribed every 4 hours for pain. And I think for a year or two I was able to do that, but you build a tolerance up to it. I remember going to my doctor and, just saying I need more. And it was about the time that I think Oxy came out, and I want to say 97. Oxycontin came out in 97. I remember my doctor going, there's this amazing drug that has a time release on it, so you don't have to take multiple throughout the day, that was kind of made for cancer patients. And I think you'd be a good candidate for it. First time I took it, that was it. It was like I felt like I had arrived, like I felt energetic. My pain was gone. I felt like I could get up and do the daily things and go to work and still play sports and still golf without the pain. And for a few years, I was able to manage that. But then again, your body gets used to it, so you need to keep increasing, what you're taking. So probably about 5 years in, I'm taking, 240 milligrams of Oxycontin, and then I'm adding in, here or there, a Loratab, a Percocet, things like that. And I knew where it was taking me. I didn't know how to stop. And I was really good at going to my doctor and taking advantage of that, right? That my body was breaking down. I need more and more and more. And then car wrecks started happening, overdoses, seizures, getting arrested, going to 12 different doctors, and that's just kind of over, a 15-year period. During that time, I'm passing trauma down to my kids. I wasn't physical in the relationship, but I was verbally abusive because I hated who I was. And so if I wasn't happy, I didn't want anybody else to be happy. And that included my wife, my friends, everybody was kind of a resource to me. And then I'm buying them off the street, and it's just continuing. And in my brain, because I come from, a family of addicts, whether it's opiates or alcohol, I just figured I wouldn't make it to the age of 35.
Here you are.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that story is not unique. That type of situation could happen to anyone just stemming from an injury or anything simple like that. So I just think that's important to recognize.
How did your wife deal with that? And did she finally hit a breaking point herself?
So, for years and years, I was a master manipulator. It was easy to cover it up until the car wrecks and money missing and, things like that, to where I would get so dope sick that I couldn't go to work and was losing jobs. And she's like, how can you be addicted to this? It's prescribed by a doctor. She didn't understand it. I wasn't doing heroin or anything at that point. It was prescribed medications. And I finally came to her and said, I'm addicted. I'm addicted to these opiates, and I don't know how to stop. In her mind, I think she knew, but I was so out of control that I think she was scared to really have a deep conversation with me. And it's like I tell people, it's like Jekyll and Hyde. It really changes the molecules in your body. It's interesting how it changes your brain. And as I kept going, Xanax got involved probably the last 2 or 3 years because I was looking for something else to mix with my cocktail. I was drinking a little bit and then all the pills. And then Xanax got involved, and that's when I would black out, and a lot of car wrecks, a lot of seizures and things like that. And, during that time, she's taking care of the kids. She's holding the fort down, paying the bills, while I'm just kind of destroying everything. And she's had some medical issues happen. She started having ulcers and things like that, and, not sleeping and nightmares. And I would take off in the middle of the night, and she'd be worried about the cops coming. So all these things that when you're stuck in your addiction, you really just don't even think about, And when I finally had a last car wreck that I had an out-of-body experience, and, that's when I got help, and it changed my life. It changed my family's life. I didn't want to continue to pass down that pain from addiction and trauma to my kids, to my grandkids. So my goal was to just end it.
How much of an impact do you think it made for yourself and also your wife for you just to say the words "I'm addicted"? Was that any sort of what launched you there? If you're just admitting it to yourself, what does that do for any situation? Does it take a lot to get there, I guess is what I'm asking.
So I feel like deep down I knew I was, but I wasn't ready to confront my demons. I wasn't ready to confront, I think, the childhood pain that I was taking into my adult addiction from having addictive family, the trauma that was passed down to me. And my wife, it took her to just take a step back and go, what do you mean addicted? It's not heroin. It's not alcohol. Again, it's prescribed by a doctor. What do you mean? So, sitting down and pointing out the car wrecks, or me manipulating, saying I'm just sick and I have the flu, and not going to kids' activities, not going to family functions, needing someone to drive me, all of those things, when I started pointing them out, it just kind of was like that, check the box type thing.
We're speaking with Travis Whittaker. He's the owner of Diamond Recovery Center in Utah. He's also a recovering addict. And you just heard about his journey through addiction. How many years did that consume of your relationship with your wife?
14.
14 years.
Yep.
I know not all circumstances are the same, but that sounds like she's an angel and she stuck it out. I'm not sure all of us have that in us. How did you start to mend the situation that you had put your family in?
Well, when I walked into treatment in 2009, I believe it was June of 2009, I think the first thing was I had to take care of myself. If I don't take care of myself, I'm not in a place to be able to start healing anybody else's wounds. So I spent 95 days in residential, really focusing on myself. Nancy went and got some, therapy on her own. The kids were younger, so we hadn't got them into treatment yet because we didn't understand that whole process, of what was passed down. But when I started working on myself, I got sober and got out, but that wasn't still the cure-all. I still had that dry drunk type mentality where I was still looking for something to excite me. So I started gambling. I started going to Wendover. I started, doing other things, looking for that type of high, that alcohol and drugs gave me. And we separated for 2 years, and I had to do some real deep work on myself and repairing those relationships with my kids.
Was that separation any sort of a turning point for you?
Yeah, it was. She served me divorce papers. I signed them. I was finally at a place where I had realized I have done so much damage and I wanted her to be happy. The mother of my kids, she deserves to be happy. And, I was willing to just give her everything and walk away. And during that time, her mom died. And then 2 weeks later, her brother took his own life. And, she started thinking, I'm seeing Travis change. I'm hearing from the kids that he's changing. Because it was all about me telling you I had changed, but it's all about actions. It's not about words, right? Mm-hmm. I had to learn that, and healing is not on my time. It's on the individual's time during their healing process to figure that out, right? So during those 2 years, I think I just learned a lot about not only myself, but sometimes you just got to let people go and you got to let them figure things out. And it just brought us back together, and we started doing therapy and got the kids in therapy and started that journey.
But it takes two willing participants to make that happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm grateful for her every day. And when I say we're coming up on 15 years of recovery, I say it's my family because it's a family journey. One person might use, but everybody's affected by it, deeply. So, family's coming up on 15 years.
Travis, if we choose to be with somebody who is addicted, can I fix him? So let's explore that question. Can I fix him?
Welcome back to Dating at Her Age. In this episode, we are talking about dating someone who has an addiction.
Whether that's to drugs or to alcohol or to prescription medications. The question that Caitlin and I want to explore, can I fix him? So, Caitlin, why don't you ask the very first question of Travis Whittaker, who's our very special guest. He's the owner of Diamond Recovery Center in the state of Utah. He's also a recovering addict. So I couldn't think of anybody better to ask this question to as two women who are in the dating world right now.
Yeah, so I think that this is something a lot of people don't really know how to navigate, but is there anything that a significant partner, significant other can do to essentially fix them? Or can we love you enough into changing? Or I don't know, how can we make you feel worthy enough? But is there anything that we can do, or does it really, what kind of support can someone offer? Or is space the biggest answer? I don't know. It's a hard thing to navigate. So
it's a great question. And, to answer, first of all, you can't fix anybody. You have to have healthy boundaries, to protect yourself because, addiction is meant to destroy everything around it, that individual. It brings so much destruction. And, and it's great going in, I think, into dating somebody, asking those hard questions. Tell me a little bit about your life. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. Because I think those things are going to tell you, where they're at in their life, whether they're in their 20s, 50s, 60s, how many times you've been married, if they're willing to talk about, why we got divorced. And I think, as a woman going into dating somebody, those are fair questions. You want to know, am I going to spend my time with you? Am I going to bring you around my kids? Is it safe? I think that those are very, very important questions.
Part of the difficulty for me in the past of dating somebody who's clearly an alcoholic is that they don't recognize what I recognize. You start to recognize it when you're always the one who's the designated driver, when you never know if they're going to be fully sober or they're going to remember the conversation that they had with you the night before. That's a really hard thing to navigate when you're trying so hard to be and stay in love with somebody. Take me inside the addict's brain, Travis. What is going on inside their brain that I don't see from the outside? Like I can see, I want to call them almost like drunk eyes, because you can tell when somebody's just had, I can tell, I'm sure a lot of people can, too much to drink. You can tell sometimes by their behaviors that they're high, but I can't read their mind. So you've been in this situation as a recovering addict. What's going on in that brain?
Well, for myself, there was a lot of pain. There was a lot of not feeling worthy about who I was. I was always out there and loved people and wanted to have that sense of humor and joking to get people to like me. But deep down, I didn't know why people liked me. I didn't know what my value was and what I brought to, any relationship, with friends or whatnot. And when I was stuck in my addiction, every time I looked in the mirror, I did not like the reflection, and there's that saying that anywhere you go, there you are, right? So, when you're not happy with yourself, you continue to drink, or it's like a lubricant when they go out to be able to talk to people. But the problem is that if it sits and continues, there's definitely other mental health things going on. And, with men, we're not talking enough about our mental health. I always talk about it's okay to not be okay, but you have to talk about it. And I think as a man, if you're going into a relationship, you should also be honest, with the individual you're going into, because if you're not, then it's never going to work out,
So if I'm telling somebody as a woman, I love you, I do enjoy being with you, and they're going through addiction, what do they hear when I say I love you? And I mean it, I love you. What do they hear?
They hear that they could probably get whatever they need out of you as a resource. So, and it depends what your addiction looks like, meaning rides to places, or maybe financial, or, just basic things like
intimacy.
Intimacy. Like, if you're stuck in addiction, you're becoming part of their resources of what they need to get by every day.
So they could be using that their significant other to get what they need, and not really filling the needs of their significant other.
Yeah, I've been in this field of addiction and mental health for a little over 10 years, and I've worked with lots of married couples where the wife or the husband is to the point where it's not going to work. But there's always somebody that comes in and manipulates a situation to try to make it work, right? But you can't take anything away from somebody, even threatening divorce or breakup or money, if they're not willing, because they're being held hostage by the disease of addiction. I mean, they have to come to a place where they tell themselves, I'm worth being loved, I'm worth having a good life, and I need to figure it out to bring that type of, intimate relationship to where you're both, doing 50-50.
I kind of want to dive into that a little bit deeper. Just talking about getting to that point, it sounds like a point of self-awareness of where you need to go. You explained it a little bit in the previous episode, but what was the first step for you to kind of get there? Was it just realization? And then also, how can someone on the other end, say a significant other, manage that situation while protecting their own peace at the same time? I'm kind of looking at both sides, like what's this action step from the person struggling with addiction, but meanwhile, what's happening over here? So
I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I knew that I was going to die. I grew up without a father figure, and I didn't want my kids to do that. And I it was time for me to change. You know, the out-of-body experience I had in a car wreck really changed the direction of my life. And I was willing to do the work. You know, I knew I had issues, and that was just really, really important to me, because if not, my kids were going to head down that same path.
I think to follow up on Caitlin's question, what advice would you give to women who are in this situation, or maybe looking to get into a relationship with somebody they know is addicted? How is it possible not to lose ourselves in that?
You know, I don't think it is.
Really?
You're having a relationship with somebody who is not mentally well. So, you know, you're not going to get 50% from them in that relationship. It is going to be a one-sided relationship if alcohol or drugs rules their relationship.
So is the best choice because then I'm like, okay, so I should just kick them to the curb, but is that best choice to just let them go and figure it out on themselves? It's a hard question to answer because I think every situation's different. So,
you know, it depends, you know, how long have you dated? You know, what does it look like? Do you have kids together? You know, if you're just, it's a new relationship in your 20s or your 50s, and, you know, how long have they been drinking? How long have they been using? Have they gotten help? I always recommend that I think everybody should have a therapist to talk to, because you have to have boundaries and take care of yourself. If you don't, a lot of times that individual will either start drinking or doing drugs with them to show they love them, which is definitely no good. Or, I mean, are you prepared that if they die or kill somebody in a DUI accident, what does that look like? I mean, that's a reality.
So let your mind go worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Think that part through.
Absolutely. You know, what's the benefit of staying with them? I mean, ask yourself that. What is it?
Write it down.
Yeah.
The benefits and the negatives of staying with them.
You know, what drew you to them after the first date? You know, how long were you dating them before you knew they were an alcoholic as well? You know, I think that's a key.
Are there lies that go along with that addiction that are hurting you? I think that's really important too, because my experience with somebody who's been, you know, dealing with addiction is they lie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those lies come in all shapes and sizes, and they're extremely hurtful. When you're trying to love somebody, and you might not be the only person, even though they've lied to you that they're trying to love too. You know, there may be 3 people in the relationship and you just have no idea, but that could be them. That could be their addiction, but how am I to know?
Yeah. And there's nothing more attractive, I think, than individuals with boundaries, and the universe feels that. Like, the universe will help protect you. You know, if you're going in because you feel like you can't find the right one, or, you know, just maybe you're getting older and you're like, okay, is this the one? Do I
settle?
Yeah.
Bingo, you hit it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You hit it. That's a lot of women I know. We were at my age, you know, I'm inching towards 60. We're settling because it's the only option out there anymore. So what do you say to us?
30,
you feel like that? Caitlin feels the
well.
same way. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing that we're also learning, and I brought it up earlier, is, you know, years ago, experts say your frontal cortex is fully developed by the age of 25. But now they're finding it's actually 45. So the generations are changing. You know, back in the day, you got married 21, 22, 23, started having kids, started having a career, like, you know, going. And then my addiction happened. Now what's happening is you're seeing people either they're starting later in life, but they're so used to going out with friends and drinking, and everything's designed around doing this or drinking or partying, and, you know, so things have changed.
Sorry to interrupt. The social concept of just drinking specifically is so outrageous to me, because you're not cool if you're the one that's sober. But in my opinion, I think it's the other way around. But continue.
No, and I was going to say, you know, when you throw in social media and the desire that everything has to be right now, where you can sit down on a weekend and watch your entire show right then and go through 5 seasons. Like, everything's right now. And so you have everything at your fingertips. And a lot of times, you know, how do I sleep now? Like, I'm wound up. Oh, let me have some drinks. Or how do I go out in a crowd because I'm so used to working out of my home and I'm not ever around anybody? I got to have some drinks. And so it just continues to fuel. I need to drink to feel better. I need to use drugs, or, You get prescription drugs and then they become more expensive. And so you're buying them off the street, and then you're doing meth to stay awake because you work weird shifts. Like, there's so many different dynamics that can play into that. But Debbie, to get back to that, yeah, I think, are you settling in that relationship? Are you looking for something because you're scared?
Travis, amazing insight. One of my biggest takeaways from these last few minutes is that if I'm sticking around to try to fix him, what I need to recognize is that he may very well be using me to get what he wants, and along the way, not really love me at all.
Yeah.
Caitlin and I have so many more questions for Travis Whittaker. He's the owner of Diamond Recovery Center in Utah, and he's also a recovering addict. And we have been talking to Travis about dating somebody who is either in addiction or recovering from addiction, but mostly about people who are, suffering from addiction and haven't gotten help yet. So this episode, I want to focus on, sadly, we're to the point where we're going to talk about the breakup. I think this is really hard for a lot of women who are in relationships. They love their partner. They want to stay with them, but life has become so difficult because they're always on the bottle, or they're always out, getting high, or they're partying, and it doesn't do us any good anymore. We recognize that it's time to let go. But I'm the kind of person who always wants to give him one last chance, like maybe there's a shot. How about you, Caitlin?
No, I think that's the hardest part for people, is coming to that point where you realize you have to let go and actually doing that. And it's because you don't want to be the bad person and you seem like the bad person, but it comes to a point where you have to do that. So Travis, at what point do you pretend you're talking to your daughter when I ask you this question?
Yeah.
When should I cut my partner off who's struggling with addiction? And
so, when your life becomes unmanageable, usually we say that in the other way around, when the addict's life becomes unmanageable. But when your life becomes unmanageable, you're not sleeping, your anxiety is through the roof. Like, you're wondering now what's wrong with you. You're not eating. Like, those are all key signs. You don't want to get out of bed. Those are all real things to be, looking at. And sometimes we don't look at ourselves enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's, maybe I don't feel good, or I'm just tired because I worked a lot this week. There's other factors that are taken.
Yeah. What parts of your life are draining you that you may not realize? It's important to know.
I think that's a great point. And Caitlin, that's an awesome way of looking at this, because it's so often, when you guys were discussing Caitlin's question there, I thought, what if you look at your relationship and you realize, like, if you just take a step back and have that sort of like out-of-body experience, if you will, look at yourself in the mirror or look at yourself from a distance and say, am I still having fun?
Yeah.
Or am I dreading the phone call? Am I dreading what I'm going to find when I walk through the door? That's, for me, when the light bulb went off. You just don't know what you're going to get. And so the weekends aren't fun. The date nights are few and far between, and they're not fun. And then it becomes a matter of, it's just not worth it. But I still want to give them one more chance. Do I offer, like, hey, let me ask you this, as a recovering addict, if I said to you, if we were in a relationship, maybe your wife said this to you, Travis, maybe that's a better example. I want you to get help. I want to love you. You're making it hard right now for me to keep loving you, and I'm losing myself. Can we go to therapy together? Does that work, or am I going to get pushed away even more?
Sometimes it does work. I think having an open conversation, like that, a lot of times, it depends when you catch that person that's stuck in addiction, if they're using or if they're not. Because if they're using, they're going to push you away, and it's just going to be a yelling. They're going to overtake the conversation. You're not going to have much to say. And that's when a lot of families will be like, okay, we need to bring in an interventionist. We need to bring somebody in neutral, it's a professional, to help set this up for treatment, right? And get them the help they need. But if you have the type of relationship where you can sit down and have that and say, hey, can we get therapy together? Let's get a plan together. I love you. I want to figure this out, because, there's always that side, like my wife, I remember who you were. when I married you and when I loved you, right? And individuals hold on to that, even though that you're not that person anymore. You know, I feel like I'm a new improved. I'm not that person that she married either. You know, I'm a new and improved model with some life experience now. But you got to start somewhere. You know, if you're getting to the point where there's DUIs or you're picking them up and, you know, people are punching walls or they're screaming and you're scared, something's got to change. Nobody should have to live like that. You know, everybody deserves to be happy, and you have to have people around you that support you, you know, and I think also professionals to talk to. There's nothing wrong with having a therapist to talk to. We all need it. You know, even I have a therapist that I still talk to. It's very, very important, you know, because I'll question things. I'm like, am I doing this right? He's like, stop doing that.
I do too. I have one, and I just go and bounce off situations. I'm like, I want to know a better way to handle it.
Don't you feel good when you leave?
I do. I also feel like my problems are shared with somebody who can help me come up with solutions. I'm not spinning in my own head. Caitlin, I thought you had this really, when we were talking about this particular episode, I thought this was really an important point that you made is it becomes scary to leave the relationship because we worry about them.
Yeah, I was going to get into that. How do you, I mean, I'm trying to just speak from my own experiences in a general way. When you bring up that conversation of ending the relationship or even just having any conversation that they want to run away from, really, we worry that we're kind of walking on eggshells, that they could go and do something self-destructive or go into a darker place. What kind of advice would you give, or just perspective that you can share on like how to approach the conversation in a way that they won't go run off and, for example, overdose or something very self-destructive that we are constantly worried about?
Well, if you're scared to have that conversation one-on-one, then, you know, I would invite parents over or friends so you're supported as well. You know, it's not really an intervention. It's just, you know, you deserve support too. If someone does leave because they're not happy with what you're saying, first of all, that is never your fault. You know, I want to make sure people understand that. It's never your fault, right? You have to take care of yourself, because if you don't, you're going to go down with the ship, right? Strong boundaries, you'd be surprised. I do interventions all the time, and they go two ways. It's either I'm ready, my bags are packed, let's go, I want help, or that part of addictions, like, you know, in our heads, breaking up with a bad relationship, right? Because they're in two relationships, one with you and one with drugs or alcohol. So that part of the brain, you know, they're like, I'm scared, so I'm going to throw a fit, I'm going to yell, scream, and I'm going to leave. But once they do that, it's usually a day or two for them to sit and go, okay, they put their boundaries in place. I'm not happy, you know, I need to get some help. And then they
Can you also, you explained this a little bit, but tell us what your mind is telling you when you do kind of retract after you get pushed away a little bit. I just want to know specifics about kind of what your brain is feeding you and what's keeping you pushed away when these types of conversations, when you're either avoiding these conversations or you have it and then you don't want to come face it again.
Well, I mean, I was in a bad relationship with drugs for almost 15 years. And, you know, I thought it was helping me. I thought it was keeping me around and serving a purpose for me. So when all of a sudden, if you come to me and tell me you can't do that no more, well, my brain will be like, okay, well, I'll show you, I'll keep doing it, right? That's kind of the reaction that just kind of happens. Is now, if you come to me now when I'm sober and say, hey, this probably isn't serving you well, it's like, okay, well, let's sit down and talk about it. But if I'm in addiction, you know, especially if people have never experienced withdrawals, experiencing withdrawals on such, and this is my experience, on such a high dose of Oxycontin and Xanax and, you know, whatever else I was taking, I would be in bed for a week and I could literally feel like the hair on my legs growing. Like you can feel everything. Everything hurts. You can't move. You can't eat. And you really want to die. So I think when you tell someone, I don't want you to do this anymore, our brain goes to all these different places.
You get scared.
Yes, absolutely.
Because that means you have to go through withdrawals. Is it the same in your experience with working with recovery patients for alcohol?
Yeah, alcohol and benzos are extremely dangerous.
What's benzos?
Benzos are like Xanax,
Okay.
Klonopin, things like
Oh,
that.
okay.
So if you're taking that, it's really what I tell people is it's like a pill. It's alcohol in a pill. It's really the same thing. It's just the doctor prescribes it rather than getting it at the liquor store.
So if our significant other says, I'm going to give up the bottle, I'm going to give up the beer, I'm going to do this for you, babe, what does that look like for them? And can they stay with it?
So if they say, so here's when I got sober, usually if you go to treatment or whatnot, you're seeing a therapist, they'll tell you to tell your significant other some things to look for. So like I told my wife, you know what? You can ask me to UA anytime. Okay? Because I'm serious about this.
Urine test.
Yeah.
Okay.
Urine test. And I want you to feel like you're also part of, you know what I mean? You're part of this too. So
you gave her permission to have you do a urine test if she had doubts.
Absolutely.
I think that's very important to bring up to include, your loved ones.
That's incredible.
In that, to have that transparency and all of that.
And so that's just one thing. What about the actual physical feeling that the somebody who's withdrawing from benzos or alcohol? What do they go through?
Well, first of all, you never want to do that on your own because of the risk of seizures and the risk of death. So you always want to make sure you go to a medical professional, whether it's a hospital or a detox facility to do that. But it's absolutely horrible. It's they have medications that help with, feeling better and not getting sick. But all of those, you've been putting poison in your body for so many years. And now all of a sudden you stop it. It's like your body goes into this shock of, what are you doing? I'm so used to you doing all these different things and putting this into the body. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm sweating. I feel clammy. I have no energy. You're pale. There's a lot of different symptoms that you could go into. But yeah, the alcohol and benzos definitely go to a medical professional.
What actions pushed you away from the relationship and what actions brought you in closer? Is there anything that comes to mind with that?
So like what pushed me away when I was in active addiction?
Yes.
Probably what pushed me away was probably when I didn't get what I wanted, right? When she started getting boundaries. Or, if I was caught in a lie on something, because when you tell the truth, there's nothing to remember, right? It's the truth. But when you're constantly lying to feel your addiction and to feel, what you need, you forget what you say. So those are probably the two biggest things.
So you'd stay away or you get pushed away because you didn't want to have to keep trying to remember what you lied about and making up more lies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's fascinating. It seems like this is a real all-in commitment if you want to stay in the relationship. You've given us so much to think about. I think we all want to do what's not only best for ourselves, but what's best for our significant others as well. But there is so much to think about. What's the hope for them if they find a recovery center or they put themselves into a detox center? What does that look like? Like do this, Travis, compare your life then compared to now.
Then I didn't want to live.
It was dark.
Yeah, it was dark. And I didn't have any value. I was ashamed of who I was as a father, as a friend, as a husband. Today, I'm so grateful for my life. I get to help other people like me know that there's a way out of addiction and that you don't have to stay living like that. I have a beautiful family. I own a treatment center. My whole family works for the treatment center. It's absolutely amazing. The opposite of addiction is connection. And, when we're stuck in addiction, we isolate. When we come out of addiction, we can do anything.
I love what you just said right there. The opposite of addiction is connection. I've never even thought of that before, but that's great. I love that. The main message that I feel like I'm getting from this conversation is that it's not black and white and everybody is different, but you do have to protect your own peace and you really have to focus on you. And for the person struggling with addiction, it also just depends on you to make that turn. And so it's kind of eye-opening that you just have to trust what's best for you if you're the person dealing with that. Can you help us navigate as a significant other or anybody who's trying to navigate a relationship with someone facing addiction? How can we protect ourselves in that situation?
That's a great question. I think, first of all, just to kind of go back, what are you looking for in a relationship? And is this what you truly want? What do you see in this individual? Is this somebody that you absolutely fell in love with and you've been with for some time? Or, a lot of times I think people are attracted to people they want to fix too. Like, I think I can fix them. This is the one.
Like they're a project.
Yeah. Is that what you're looking for? Is that what you're usually kind of drawn into?
That's me. I know this isn't a therapy session.
Yeah.
Is that you too, Caitlin?
It's a lot of us, yeah.
I do. I tend to be attracted to men, and you don't know this going in, but you get a couple of weeks or a month or two in, and it's like they need to be fixed. And I'm up for the challenge. It's a really dangerous emotional place to go because my experience in dating men who I can tell need a lot of support and fixing, it always ends. It just, I cannot sustain that kind of a relationship. You can only do that so much. I'm not running a recovery center.
Right, yeah.
I'm still working a full-time job. I have kids. I want to go have fun. I want to travel. I want to go on hikes. You can't do that with somebody who can't leave their home.
Right.
Or is up to no good, because they're just addicted or they've got a whole host of other problems that they are not willing to work on themselves. So my experience as a serial dater in my 50s is I've ended up with men, being in relationships with men who need to be fixed. And I just have found I don't have the tools to accomplish that for them. And it's really hard to try to fix somebody who just doesn't want to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting too.
Yeah. And you hold on to that potential is what I think a lot of us see of like, I know that you're capable of being this person, but why aren't you getting there? Because it's hard. It's hard as the other person.
This is who
understand.
I want you to be.
Yeah,
will you be that?
And I've seen you be this person before in some situations. So
Do you also do this, Caitlin? If you just see how amazing I am and how much fun this could be together on this incredible journey that we're going to create, you'll change. And I think it's also being just an outsider looking in on this, although I've dealt with family addiction too, it can be like, oh, we're just going to turn that next corner and everything's going to be okay. Or I'm going to show up tonight and they're going to be sober or they're not going to be high. And I also become delusional about it. It's not real.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not operating in reality. Do you do that, Caitlin?
I think it just becomes like a constant, you're setting yourself up for constant disappointment in certain situations like that. And it's not to say that happens every single time, but you get your hopes up like, oh, it's different, it's changing. And then it's like, oh, nope, never mind. It's not changing. Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, I mean, and also, you throw in the fact that if maybe you're really attracted to that person and you're like, they're the one. I'm going to work through whatever. They're the one. They have what I'm looking for, right? But write a list, pros and cons. Write a list. What do you want in a relationship? What will you not allow? And I think you really need to have boundaries going into it. And like I said, it's okay to say, this is what I'm looking for. Are we on the same page? I rather than 3 months down the road going, okay, you've invested so much time. And then again, I feel like I'm getting older. Do I just go with it? No, you deserve to be happy and you deserve to have those boundaries and find a mate that you're compatible with.
You match.
Yeah.
And I think learning to set boundaries and stick to them is just a big task on its own, and it takes a lot of work to do that.
There's a theme here Caitlin and I have been exploring. It is list writing.
Yep.
And Travis, the example I use is when I go to the grocery store to shop for a few items, if I don't have a list, even if it's 3 items, odds are I'm going to walk out of that grocery store and get all the way home and realize I forgot the one reason I went there because it wasn't on a list.
Yeah.
Or I overspend. I buy way too much. I don't buy enough of something because I forgot to write it on a list. It's curious to me why we shop with a grocery list, but we don't make a list of things that we would like to see in what could potentially be a life partner. Because you can always go back to the grocery store and get something else. It's really hard to get sucked into a relationship that individual matches absolutely nothing of what you're looking for, but you actually didn't know what you're looking for because you never wrote it down. And I'm also a firm believer that list can change.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? As we get older, it may change. That list doesn't have to necessarily be written in pen. It can be written in pencil.
And it's okay to have, what you need. That's okay. You will find somebody that meets that requirement. I feel like, when I tell my kids, don't be in a rush. The right person will come. I'm a big God guy. God will give you what you need when it's time. Until then, just keep working on yourself. Be open to it. Enjoy your life. Life, it does go quick. I'm in my 50s now too, and it's gone fast, but it's beautiful. The ride's beautiful. And, I think that loving yourself is where it just all starts.
Well, thanks for sharing and being so open with us.
You bet.
I know this will help a lot of people. Thanks, Travis.
You bet.